Welcome back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. Today, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm going to be focused on something that is somewhat of a hot topic, but people tend to maybe not always understand how to utilize this mental health strategy, and that is being able to set boundaries and understanding the freedom associated with setting boundaries. So first, I want to focus on why do we set boundaries? What's the purpose of us setting boundaries? Now, the purpose of us setting boundaries is rarely for us to control other people and their actions. Is that sometimes an outcome of being able to set boundaries? Yes, because we set rules and stipulations for people's behavior or a person's behavior in order for them to be an active participant in our lives. And that's not necessarily controlling their behaviors, but that's understanding your own limitations and what you are going to require and accept as a behavior from someone else in your life. And that's the true purpose of setting boundaries. The true purpose of setting boundaries is for you to learn your own limitations, for you to start to identify what behaviors, what activities, what things from yourself and other people are you willing to allow in your life and in your space. And understanding that the hardest part of setting boundaries and the number one obstacle that get in the way of you setting effective boundaries is being able to learn how to deal with and accept the guilt that is associated with setting boundaries. And yes, even for those seasoned pros or individuals who have been setting boundaries with others for a really long time, still have that guilt. We still have that internalized feeling of, I had no true reason to say no. But in those moments, I either had reached my limitations of the things that I can do or the ways that I could help, or that was not something I really wanted to do, so I said no. And it's uncomfortable, and to sit with that guilt of not being able to do something that you're capable of doing for someone else, but knowing you don't have the mental capacity or the physical capacity to do it, is one of the hardest things to process and to deal with when we're trying to set boundaries. So the reason why this is hard for us and the reason why we feel this guilt is because we've heard for much of our lives and we've learned that it's best or it's better to be altruistic or to be giving of others or giving to others. But what we never spend the time to talk about or what we never spend the time to teach or learn is that we need to be able to give within our limits of giving. We have no infinite cup of things to give from or from ourselves to give to others. We have very finite resources and we have a very finite ability to be there for others before it completely drains us and we have no ability to do the things we need to do for ourselves. And the first thing we need to do in order to set adequate and effective boundaries is be able to identify your wants versus your needs. And I know, let me let that sink in for a minute. I need you to have the ability, or I want you to have the ability to identify your needs versus your wants. And they're not the same. So let's take it old school. Let's take it back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there are physiological and safety needs that are true needs. And everything else outside of that is primarily a want. So when we think about physiological needs, we're thinking about those basic needs that we all need to survive as a human species. So we need food, we need shelter, we need clothing for warmth, we need air, we need water. We need all of those resources in order for us to continue to live. And when we think about safety needs, we need to be healthy. We need to maintain our health. We need to have adequate employment. We need to have adequate shelter. We need to have those basic things that make us feel safe and make us feel like we have the ability and the capability to be helpful to others. Once we're able to identify our needs versus our wants, we're then able to identify others' needs versus their wants. And this allows us to set boundaries a little bit more efficiently. And I want to highlight selfishness versus selflessness and understanding the difference between those two and understanding that there are going to be times when you're going to be selfish and it feels very uncomfortable, and there are going to be times where you're going to feel selfless, and that may feel both good and bad. And we have to be able to take a step back and understand that there is no true black and white. There is always a gray area. So there is never going to be a time where you feel completely awesome about being selfish or completely elated about being able to be selfless. It's going to have that duality of emotion. So you may feel good, both good and stressed out about being selfless. You may feel both good and guilty about being selfish. Understanding and having that flexibility allows us to feel comfortable with setting boundaries. So I had a client back when I was doing, not couples counseling, back when I was doing college counseling that kind of broke it down in a really good way. And that has stuck with me to this day. And this particular client, we were working on time management and learning how to set boundaries with sports, academics, and everything else that tends to go on when you're in school or in college. So my client came in and told me one day, they said, Dr. Chi, I think I figured it out. They said to me, what I feel like is that selfishness is when we put our wants above the needs of others, while selflessness is us putting our needs below the wants of others, or vice versa, us putting others' wants above our needs. Will there be times when you are selfish or selfless? Yes. But there should be a balance in those times. There should be a balance of being able to understand your own internalized limitation when it comes to your needs and when it comes to your wants, and being able to understand your own limitation as it relates to being able to be there for others when they are in need or when they simply have a want that you have the ability to fulfill. So what I hope you've learned from today is that guilt or feeling guilty or feeling disappointed in yourself are typically the emotions that are associated with being able to set healthy boundaries with others. Does that ever go away? Not completely, but you learn to accept that guilt or that disappointment of not being able to be there for others will be present. But you also understand that you have a finite amount of resources, both internally and externally to you, to be able to give to others. That does not make you selfish. That makes you very clear about what you have, what your needs are, and what you're able to and willing to give to others. In the next video, what I'm going to focus on is how do we concretely set boundaries in a way that we communicate what they are to other people, and we're not just being vague. We're not just walking around saying you violated my boundaries and someone is trying to figure out what you're talking about because they have absolutely no clue what they've done and what your boundaries were. So it's like this imaginary line that they've somehow crossed, but no one explained to them what it was. We're going to talk about how do you explain to them what that boundary was that they may have crossed, or what boundaries you have moving forward. And you don't have to use the word boundaries. Sometimes it gets under my skin when people say boundaries instead of simply saying what the behavior was that was problematic, because now it becomes a catchphrase. And we know when we dilute something so much that it loses its effectiveness. So learning how to utilize the skill by putting that into action and putting some action words behind what you're talking about and what your true boundary is allows you not to have to say boundaries, and allows you to simply explain to people what it is that they're doing that has crossed your threshold or your limitations. So I thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope this has been helpful. As per every video, if you have any questions, comments, or future video requests, jot them down in the comment section, and I'll be speaking with you again very soon. Thank you.